Hey, awesome. So hopefully we got this going on. I know it's been a while since we've talked, so I got some videos that I'm trying to get out next week, but I thought it'd be good just to do a Q&A session, go live, and go through some of the questions that we've had that I wanted to get to, and then also just provide some updates of kind of what I'm doing and what's going on in my world. So, like most of everybody out there, at some point this year, been in some sort of travel restriction for sure, but also quarantine to some extent. So stay-at-home orders or something like that. So here it is. Thought I'd just put a hat on today, but you can see, man, I've been struggling to stay in the house and not had any had a lot of interaction outside or a haircut as well too. So hopefully, things are starting to perk up around the U.S. right now. So hopefully, maybe you can get a haircut sometime soon. So wanted to go through some questions. If anybody has any questions, throw them down here in the chat and I'll try to answer them. Or if you're out there, just put something in the chat and let's talk. I'm going to go through some of the questions that we've had in the community. And then also talk about a couple of things. So before we get in, I did want to say, some of the things that I've been working through just, in some downtime and having more time on my hands. I think in November of this year, my AWS Solutions Architect Associate certification is going to roll off. So I've got to re-up that. So I've started going through and just getting back familiar. I haven't done a lot in AWS here lately, but I want to keep that certification. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm actually going through and taking some time, trying to do my 30 minutes a day to get briefed up on that. So I may do a video on that if everybody's kind of interested in it. I think I'm going to go for they have a baseline certification. Let me see. I'm going through a Pluralsight course on it just to kind of get up, but there's some quizzes and some other things you can take out there. Certified practitioner. So the certification is called certified AWS certified practitioner. And so it's just a base level. Like it's not as in-depth as solution architect or the developer, but for kind of the stuff that I've been working on, I thought it'd be good just to try to take that one first. And so at least I've got one. Then I may go back and redo my solutions architect as well. But I think I'm going to do a video on that because there's some really cool updates to Pluralsight too that kind of help you set your goal for learning. So, hey, Jose, do I use EMR? I do not right now, but I have. I spent some time. So one of the reasons that I got the AWS certification was I was actually working on some training and doing training around specifically AWS's big data solutions. So part of that was around EMR and some other things. So I'm familiar with it, but honestly, I haven't dug into it in the last year, maybe about a year and a half or so too. But there's some things I've been working on that may start to come back up. Spent a good bit of time around the Splunk community too. But let me jump into some of the other questions. So here we go. All right, so I'm just going to start knocking off some of these as I see them. So thank you for sharing your advice. I'm a coding beginner, United States Air Force veteran, age 35. I've got a bachelor's in accounting and finance, and I'm a student at University of Kentucky. I want to be a data engineer because I feel like my skills and strengths fit that. Oh, man, that's awesome, man. So that's great. And let me see if I thought there was a question, quite a few. Yeah. Oh, here's one that says, "You are dumb, accept it." So I guess this was in relation to my review of Coursera's neural network and deep learning course. I guess because I was talking about how I struggled with it a little bit. I'll accept it. So there you go. So here's one that we've seen a good bit here. Big data, big questions. Does machine learning engineer need a bachelor's degree? So it's going to depend on the company and the organization that you're at. it won't hurt you to have it, but it's not necessarily something you have to have. So, depending, and then we've really seen roles kind of reverse, a little bit more, especially like when you talk about deep technical skills, like, developer, data engineer, machine learning engineer may fall into that bucket. There's some places that, no matter your skills and your background, if you don't have a bachelor's, they're kind of going to shy away from hiring you or just make it a hardcore requirement. But I've seen that loosen up a good bit. But there's no reason you can't pursue it if you've got a good bit of background. One thing though, I have found, and I still believe it to be true, is having that first level bachelor's or master's kind of helps you get in the gate a little bit faster. So for gatekeeping and some of the other things, it may be more beneficial. But if you've got a huge background and a huge bit of skills, you're involved in the open source community, I think it's the requirements aren't as strict as they used to be. Let's see. Great tips, Thomas. Thanks. Hope you're doing well during these Corona times, and we'll be seeing more videos soon. So yeah, so this is kind of this came in a couple weeks ago. This is another reason why I thought it was just great to just jump on, right? Like I said, messy hair, don't care, but I thought it would be great just to go ahead and get out there and get a live session just to talk. For the folks that are on, like, why don't you type in, and what are you doing in these times? Are you learning anything new? Like I said, I'm going through some AWS stuff right now. Still heavily involved in the Splunk area, and I've got some tutorials that should be coming out here soon around the things that are going on there, some tips and tricks, and some problems that I've seen and how I solved them. So anybody that's just joining in, throw in here in the comment section all the things that you're learning right now. All right, so here's another one. Comes in from Paul Russell. It says, hey, Thomas, any thoughts on the Udactiy Nanodegree program? I'm looking to start an online course that will help me build a portfolio of projects and, of course, introduce me to new technologies used as data engineering field. If you have any other course suggestions, that would be appreciated too. Thanks. So, yeah, Nanodegrees, Pluralsight, LinkedIn, Coursera. I think if you've been following my channel, that's something that, I've invested in. Strictly speaking, I'm a Pluralsight author, so of course I'm biased. Before I was a Pluralsight author, I was a Pluralsight student. I still consider myself a Pluralsight student. And I think those bring a lot of value. So, but the thing about it is, it's not a practice where you're just going to consume and watch those videos. You're actually going to go through and you need to have some hands-on skill with it. So, whether in my instance, going through an AWS course, whether I'm spinning up and using my own AWS account to make sure that as I'm going through Elastic Beanstalk, that I'm deploying and using some of those technologies that I'm learning, that's going to really hammer home the skills that you want. So love the Nanodegrees. Like I said, I'm not going to belabor the point, but I've got 10 Pluralsight courses, all around data engineering. I think those are great, but I think there are a lot of great courses out there. I'm not the only person. So yes, if you're doing those, definitely, I think there's value in them. Make sure you're getting some hands-on skill. And bonus points if you create a video, blog post, some kind of content out there, or GitHub resource, right? Repository, sorry. Have something out there that you can show. Because if you're learning this for an internal, maybe there's some internal things you want to do. Maybe you're wanting to move into a lead architect or join a different team within your organization. Or if you're looking to, advance your career, outside of the organization you're in, or maybe even the industry, having something that you can point back to say, hey, not only did I get the Nano degree, or not only did I go through the Pluralsight course, I also, built this application, or here is a specific blog post where I encountered a problem, had it. Actually was talking to a family member in the last couple of weeks where they were going through applying for a new role. And, that was one of the things that came up was, hey, tell me how you solved a certain problem. And it was like, hey, this is actually what I did. I created a video on it. And, this is how to solve that specific problem. And it actually piqued the interest with that family member's job search. So really interesting to kind of see some of those things go happen. And, just my thoughts on that. Let's see. All right. So I've been recruiting for just under a year and a half and recently stepped into an IT recruiting role. Uh-oh. Hope I can answer this one. I'm not experienced as a recruiter. Specifically, I found interest in big data. However, I'm struggling with certain job titles as it relates to the job responsibilities. Yes. What are some instances I can see an ETL developer has the same responsibilities as a data engineer? Sometimes it's quite different. ETL meaning more analytics or technical BA. My question is there a difference? How do I differentiate? We're kind of in an era. Well, first off, there's a lot of different names that are out there. This is not only just in big data, right? This goes into, other industries. I mean, even in developers, right? What is a lead developer? What is a project manager? Some project managers only do project management. Some lead developers don't develop anymore. So there is no standardization for job descriptions, and I don't think there should be, right? I remember when I graduated with my undergrad, one of my teammates, well, not teammates, but somebody I was working with on projects, he ended up taking a role that was listed as an Excel wizard. So, or no, maybe it was guru. No, it was wizard. I think it's a wizard. So, I mean, some companies have just really cool names, and some of them are pretty flat, and everybody has the same name, and it's just different levels. So, coming back to your question, I think an ETL developer is something that you would see. If I were to look at it, and once again, I'm not recruiting, I don't do any hiring, but one of the things, if I saw an ETL developer listed, I would think of it as more traditional, like enterprise data warehouse, maybe, even kind of on the database, so DBA and that kind of side, where, if I saw a data engineer, they would do the same thing to some extent, right? There would still be, managing of the data and building out those systems and the pipelines to get the data into, Hadoop, Splunk, Spark, even just NFS mounts if you're doing deep learning. But, I would think that a data engineer, machine learning engineer, data scientist, those are going to be more where we see outside of maybe traditional enterprise data warehouse. So specifically, database engineers, they can fall, database administrators, ETL, they can all fall in the bucket. And those are the teams that, if they want to accelerate and, change their skill set into a data engineer role, those would be people I would look at. So let me answer it like that. I was a recruiter and I were looking for big data engineers, and I couldn't, I was having a hard time finding it. I wouldn't overlook folks that had a background in DBA or ETL development, and just look at some of the projects. And this can kind of go back to that question I just answered a minute ago, where, yeah, maybe that's the role that they've been in, and those are the things that they've been doing that were more not big data related today, like not Hadoop related, or not TensorFlow or Spark, or just name any of the hot things that you're looking for on the big data side. But if they had started working on some of those projects, I mean, that's where it's like, all right, I think that transition would be fairly simple for those folks. So, got a question coming in. Thanks for the questions. If anybody has any, make sure you put them in the comment section here. My client is not interested in investing in Hadoop and wants to use Spark for data processing. Do you think Hadoop is, I think you mean obsolete? I don't know. It depends. I mean, if the client doesn't want to go into Hadoop and you don't have a reason to, there's no reason to steer them that direction. That's just my thoughts with being able to answer a question, just right off the cuff. Now, if there are some things or some reasons we'd want to put them in specifically into Hadoop, then, I mean, yeah, you can make the case. I mean, you're the trusted advisor, right? So, if you're looking at the environment and you think it needs it, then, you can make that case. But I think the question is a little bit high. I think you're looking kind of a little bit higher level question, kind of hey, where are we going? So I will say the trends and some of the things you're seeing, there are a lot of folks that are running just Spark without having to use Hadoop. And remember, on this channel, when I say Hadoop, we're really talking about the ecosystem, and sometimes I even include Spark in that. But for this answer, where I think you're asking, and you can clarify it in the comments if I'm totally off base, but I think you're asking, do you have to set up Hdfs, right? So does the customer have to have Hdfs and maybe Hive and some of the other things to be able to run, or if they just want to run Spark, is that okay? And that's totally fine. Like, you don't even have to be running Hdfs, right? You can run it off of S3. You can run it off of NFS mounts. There's some ways to do some different things there. And then, even in the Spark community, you've got Spark SQL and some of the other tools. So that is not uncommon to see customers and clients request that. So that's something that I've been able to see and talk to folks about. So another question coming in from Jose, and he's asking, why do data engineers use Spark for? So data processing, right? But it's a pretty robust platform. Calling it a platform, it's kind of hard. So it is a processing engine, but there's a lot of tools that kind of surround it, that orbit, right? So not only can you do ETL like we were just talking about, so you can take data and process it or do ETL on it to put it in a format where you can actually run queries on it. But you can actually use Spark SQL, and there's a lot of libraries that are interconnected and supported within Spark too. So just being able to do singular value decomposition. I know everybody that watches this channel probably has to be like, is that the only algorithm he knows? Not really, but it's the one that caused me the most pain, so I always bring it up. So it's one of them that I always check. But let me put a link in here too. But MLlib Spark. All right. So just to know what I'm talking about here, but if you can look, there's some tutorials and some examples and documentation you can go through in here that show how to use MLlib, so machine learning library within Spark. So this was pretty cool too. So the way it's changed a lot, I'm sure, but for me, starting out doing MapReduce and Hadoop, when we started looking at Spark, it was different because of the way the package is. One, it's just so much faster. I mean, you'll see it when you go and look at that link, but it's so much faster. Also, the libraries and the way everything was included was a lot more seamless versus, man, I can't even remember now. What was it? Mahout. So like we had to install Mahout to be able to do singular value decomposition and some other pieces. And it was just inherent and a lot easier with Spark. And then just the blazing speed, right, that we were seeing it. So hope I answered your question, Jose. If you get a chance, it's just for anybody watching. I'm not sure if you can't see the chat. It's sparkapache.org. So go there, dig into the libraries and some of the other pieces. One more question. How to stage data reading from Google BigQuery to BI? It becomes very expensive while direct query between BigQuery and Power BI. I'm not going to be able to answer that one, honestly. So if I'm being honest, I'm not sure. I'm not as familiar with all the Google tools, or not even all the Google tools. I'm only familiar with a couple Google tools so far right now. And I'm assuming that you're asking about GCP. And, that's one of the things that maybe, and if you weren't on here earlier, I'm going through and I'm trying to re-up my AWS certification. But it's one of the things that I've got on my list to kind of start to look at and start to understand a little bit better. So I know there's some great tools in there and some certifications. Like I said, I've looked at Dataproc and some of the instances, but haven't used that. And honestly, in my career, I don't think I've ever used Power BI either. So cool. Well, hey, no problem. Thanks for the question, but and thanks for joining in and asking too. So if anybody else has any questions, put them in the comment section here. I'm going to go through a couple more questions from Studio from the YouTube studio here, and then if we don't get any more questions, I think we'll call it a wraps for today. Everybody enjoy their weekend as well. So let's see. Okay, well, I'm doing a research paper on software engineering and data analytics. I submitted a problem like looking in a software engineering process from a big data project. But now with the huge information on the internet, I'm confused. This is my first paper. Please help. Little and short time. Okay, yeah. So this is in reference to my example of big data projects, and sounds like just from reading the comments, I'm gonna kind of make some assumptions here. But you're trying to do a research paper on big data. So there's tons of examples out there. I think part of it is, yes, there's so much information on the internet to get confused. So, man, so, I gave some examples in that video. I can't think of all of them off top, but I think the basic tutorial example most people see, or at least when I started looking at like streaming analytics and some of the other pieces, were taking sentiment analysis from Twitter data. So, I mean, if I had to be put on the spot, which I am here on this channel, and I want to try to help, I would start looking at things that you're interested in. So for me, if you said, Thomas, come up with a project right now, I would know that it would be easy enough for me to pull in Twitter streams and then do Twitter analysis, do Twitter kind of pulls off of hashtags. So I would look for hashtags and especially with all the things that are going on right now with COVID-19, I would look at specific stock market tick analysis. So you can actually go through and use some of the tick stamps for certain companies within Twitter. So I would look for references for those companies to be called out, and then do some kind of analysis, and you can pull publicly available stock information and see what's going on, and maybe you could do some sentiment analysis on those specific companies, and then also see track those to see what their market value has done. It's going to be very volatile right now, but it would be interesting to see, and then go into it not knowing, not knowing what the assumptions are, right? Like if people are talking good about it, you would think they would go up, but has that changed with COVID-19? Probably right now, right? Because I mean, not everything's taking a beating, but it's been up and down, and a lot of volatility. So I would start to look for something like that. One, because I know I can get those data sources. And then two, because I know there's a ton of examples to help me just get started. Because it sounds like from your question that you're just getting started into it. It's a research paper you're having to do, I'm assuming, for school. So that would be where I started. See, can you suggest a website for case studies to build an end-to-end pipeline using SQL, preferably Athena? If you're looking for Athena, make sure. Perfect. So cheated a little bit, Googled it, but just made sure. So yeah, Athena, I thought so. So Athena is from an AWS perspective. The first thing I would do is let me see, get started here. Yeah, there's quite a few. I'm going to put it in the comments section here. So first off, thanks for your question. But the first thing I would do is I'm not as familiar with Athena. I think when I was going through and building out training for AWS, I don't think I had to touch on this. And if I did, I apologize. Man, I'm forgetting. But I would go through some of the tutorials and stand those up, and then from there, kind of the sky's the limit. That's the best I can talk about it. I'm not sure. That's where I would start. So I'd start off with the AWS resources, and then I'd probably do a Google search on GitHub and look for some repositories that show some quick examples. So that's what I've done. So took the same approach when I was going through TensorFlow, using Presto. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'd go from that perspective and look within Presto, go through some of those examples. But that would kind of be my approach. Start small with the tutorials and some of the basics, and then there's so many helpful folks out there in the community, probably on GitHub, that would help as well. So did that answer your question? I'm not sure if it did. If you've already done some of that baseline, you're probably looking to go to the next level. Without me knowing much about it, I can just give you broad guidance. But from that perspective, I would, if you've already got the baseline and everything, I'd start to look at building my own projects, kind of like the paper I was just explaining, how I would tackle a specific research paper that I could choose, right? So if there's something you're interested in, maybe it's sports related, anywhere where you can find data sources, you can start to build out some of your projects there. Good questions coming in. Thanks, everyone. Let's see. Man, so this isn't a question, this is a statement, but I'm excited about this. And this is good for the community. So this one came in from Kevin Lee on my Apache Spark versus Beam. And he's got an interview with HSBC, and then Spark and Beam. He's saying that Spark and Beam is a must. So anybody out there that is asking, hey, what are some technologies that folks are being interviewed on? Good information coming in from the community. Sounds like Kevin is being interviewed, and Spark and Beam are some of the questions that are being interviewed in that interview or being sought out by the employer. So pretty cool. Here's another comment. Video starts here at 2:13. Well, I guess I didn't answer until 2:13. I'm not sure. So. Bachelor's in Business Administration. What masters should I get, whether information systems or data science? Love that one. And that's in reference to where I was comparing data science versus computer science degree. So this one, fairly, from my perspective, it's fairly simple, right? Like, what are you looking to do? Are you looking to go into data science? Are you looking just to have those skills? Maybe you're not going from a technical perspective, right? It's like maybe you're not going to be a data scientist, but if you're going into a business, role, but want to understand data science, then that can be very, important too. But when you get to your master's level, maybe with data science, if you're going to be a data scientist, you'd really want to have that data science degree. But I think either way, if you're not going in to be a data scientist, I think you're okay going, choosing either one, right? But it would be interesting to see folks who are non-technical or maybe not going to have such a technical degree or technical role in their organization, getting a data science degree just so that they can speak and understand and leverage that technology to help accelerate their career, right? Like I think you're seeing it in organizations. So companies that are leveraging big data and are good at it too, not just, hey, we're going to stand up Hadoop, but we don't have a strategy around it. It's not really how it's supposed to work, right? But who are actually leveraging that data and making data-driven decisions from these technologies, they're really starting to excel. So my thought is having folks, career-minded, leaders who have a background in data science is only going to help. So. All right, one more question, unless I get another question here in the comment section. And thanks again for everybody's interaction, and thanks for joining in today. So, and if you're new and you just popped in, I'm really interested to see what are folks learning right now, right? Like, are you taking this time? I've been in a stay-at-home order for the last couple of months, and I've been working on learning a couple of things. What are you learning? I'm just always interested to see. Okay, I've been using, so I'm getting a lot of comments on the C++ video I did where, I said a majority of deep learning wasn't in CC after C++. And then after kind of looking at it, there was a good bit, right? So I kind of came back to it and said, you know what, there's a good bit there. It's not, it's not a deal breaker. People are really upset with my take on it. So I've been doing C++ for 20 years. I have no idea how to use Visual Studio. Okay. Anyway, if you're doing pioneering stuff, you should stick with C++. I mean, a lot of libraries that are used by development communities are written in C++ and is especially useful to ensure fast execution speed. I don't disagree with that at all. So I don't disagree with C++ being the base level for it. I have a comment, I guess, not a disagreement, but my whole stance around the C++ is not everybody wants to understand it at that level. And it goes back to, we say it in the development community, but we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Like from a C++ perspective, you can kind of get down into binary code, right? Like everything's kind of stacked up, right? I got into the big data community and I used Pig because I didn't like writing in Java. So Sure, it was easier. Well, it wasn't easier when I wrote in Java. I would have wrote it in Java, but it was so much faster, and I liked it better when I could when Pig, the technology that stood on top of Java, right, and allowed me to write my own code to write queries and to transform data. When I could write those 6 lines of code versus that 30 or 40 lines of code, that was okay for me, right? Like, I did know Java, but I didn't want to have to stand that up and work on it each time. And so same thing with using Python libraries and TensorFlow and some of the other pieces, right? A lot of folks just want to be able to do it. And I think it's better for the community when we go through and use these higher level languages, right? It gets more people involved. Like, more people are doing deep learning than, I can make this statement and defend it. More people are doing deep learning and using technology because they can use technologies like TensorFlow and Python versus writing it in C++. I think if you had to only do it in C++ and there weren't these higher level abstraction languages, I don't think there would be as much movement in the community. I think there still would be people out there doing it, but it wouldn't even be half of what it is. So I'm gonna stick with that. Maybe I should make a video on that and everybody get mad at me about that too. But I really think I know I can back that up. Like, I know that's a fact. I mean, that was the whole point, with many of the tools in the Hadoop ecosystem. And I mean, you see that everywhere, right? Like, that's why, like, in the JavaScript community. So I used to be a web developer back in the day. That's why there's all these tools in JavaScript and all these other libraries in JavaScript, because it made it easier to do it. So, and it brought more people to be able to go to it. So currently doing the data engineering path at Data Camp. That's awesome. Man, I've looked at Data Camp, never had a subscription. What are your thoughts on that? And what are some of the technologies that you're learning with it? So I know you had asked about Athena and Presto. Are those based around AWS primarily, or is it kind of just open freeform? So, all right. So I think we're going to wrap it up. And sorry, I'm still looking at those other questions, but I want to thank everyone for joining in today. Looking forward to getting some more videos out next week. So some interesting topics. Keep questions coming in. If you have ideas for the show, want to be interviewed on it, just let me know. And everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening if it is the evening. So thanks again.